we have decided to add a shim where this gap is, about that big, a little smaller than that. Here's our wood, shim expansion wood. And this is the only piece long enough that will make that shim. And I don't think this piece is good enough. It's kind of full of dents and funny colors. So it looks like I need to go get some more wood. Here's some soundboards. Looking for a shim for that Mason soundboard. That one's too thin. Ooh, this looks pretty nice. Thick enough, but the grain is too wide. Looks like there's two different types of boards here, or grain patterns. Looks like the bottom half of this might be a good selection. So I'll put that off to the side, see if there's any more. I'm sure there is. A lot of these are very thin. That Mason board is very thick. It's hard to find pieces for it. Here's a piece. Might be perfect. Thick enough. It's hard to see. Grain pattern might be good, so I'll put that with the other one. I'll keep digging through this, pick out a few pieces, and then look at them in better light. There's all sorts of neat stuff up here. Here's possibly a Mason molding strip for the soundboard. Found some nice buttons and a treble strip. Not sure why this is here. Check out this rib. This is a funky rib. A double rib. This was a hazel. Number 25470. Look how thick that is. That's half an inch thick, or almost. If I could find long pieces of this, that would be perfect. And they might be right here. They seem to be getting longer. Little tiny thin board. Don't need that. Here's one. And a super long piece. This might work. Very wide grain. It seems like nearly all the grain in that Mason is tight grain. Like the bottom half of this, there's two sections. Goes from wide to thin. There's big holes in it though. This probably isn't very useful. What else? Here's one. This looks good. This might be a V piece. I'll put that with the rest that I'll be taking. This one too looks pretty nice. Probably too wide. Here's a big piece. There's a whole soundboard right here. I think it's thick enough. It's hard to see, but this grain looks good. I'm going to take this whole panel with the other pieces and check them out in the light. They don't look like much now, and people might freak out if we told them we're going to put this into your piano. A small piece of it anyway. Here is my board that I need to match. There's some of the decal, Mason. It's a pretty tight green, not super tight. I think I need to wash these off first. They're too difficult to see. That one looks okay. This one I pretty much can't tell. I think this is that hazel. That looks good. If I get this piece, it would be right next to it. There's a clean spot. Down here is pretty clean. You can see the grain. Looks the same. Very close. That's what we're after. Long enough. Very nice. So that looks like the winner. Here's that piece I picked out. That will become our little shim. It's going to be glued to the main panel I have here. Get glue all over everything. Easy. You just got to make sure both ends are sticking out. It doesn't need to be lined up. Push it that way into the board, and these squeeze it and make sure they're flat. Here is the final size of the shim. You can see the screw hole in there lines up perfectly. If everything is in the right spot, it lines up perfectly. It's hard to see, but that should be very good. I'll glue these two together, these two pieces, and then start working on this one. This shim is a little bigger than it needs to be, so the whole board is this way. From here over, it's this way a little too much. So we're going to take some wood off of this one, because when it came apart down there, I think it broke a little and took some wood with it, so it's kind of jagged. So we will take some off of this piece and make it flat to fit against this piece, and it should be very good. And we have these shims too. This is a big shim. This will be glued in there before it is flattened, so we save as much wood as possible. Here's a shim too. This might be too small to put back. I think we could put it back. We have some that were so small they just kind of disintegrated. So that's going to be glued very soon. Here's the press for the soundboard. These are all rough cut. I marked it with pencil. And I'm going to take this big, slightly flexible sand block and smooth everything out. Make it nice and even, like so. And I'm going to do this for a few minutes, and then we can come back and look at it when it's finished. And the trick is to get these all even. They're looking pretty good. This one might be a little lumpy here. Looks like this is a little higher. We'll make this a nice smooth dish. Once these are all sanded out, then this will be finished. And once we're done with this, we can take it all apart. They're just screwed to this. And then we can store these, and if we ever get another Mason and Hamlin CC, we can use this to recrown the board. So it's pretty cool. Here is a shim for the board. Original shim. I'm going to attempt to put it back. It will make it much easier to work on this board if this is glued here. See the original decal. Some of it's still left. So the plan is to clamp that there, put a block in between the clamp and the shim and squeeze it to the board. We're going to heat it up with our old heater because everything used to be warm with hot hide glue. And hopefully I can glue this on with no troubles. Here's our main panel with the freshly glued shim. This piece now fits very good over here, but in the middle there's a big gap. Down here there's some tiny spaces. You could put a little shim here. Glue this together. This is a little crack. Put a shim there maybe. This big gap is where this shim was, the factory little tiny piece. That would go right there. It might be a little too beat up to put back. Fits good though, that's where it was. So I might be able to glue this together. If not, I can get rid of this. Pick out a piece from our pile of spare soundboards, like this one. This one looks long enough. That could go right in there. It would be another spacer. I would have to plane this flat, this edge. Just glue that there. This is where the bridge was on this soundboard. That might not sand out. It'd be an ugly thing on the face of the board. I might not use this. It's all cracked up too. So this piece might not be good. Let's see if I can glue this back. There's where the rib was. Another rib. I can probably put that back and glue up the end of this and just keep working my way towards the middle. It's difficult to see, but the grain looks like it matches very well. At least squigglies will sand out. And this has finish on it. It's almost impossible to tell. But this is the shim. This came from an upright. I think 1890s. or maybe 1900. It's almost the same age. Look how much thicker it is. It's really thick board. They're both pressed down. I forget what this was. It's really thick. Nice wood. This was like a pocket in the back of the piano. This was surrounded by blocks of wood. It's like perfectly preserved wood, 100 years old. No finish or anything. So that's going to be the new shim. That should work very good. Starting on the bass section, I'm going to glue these three together. Just like that. They fit great. That hole lines up there. This one might be able to be glued too. I don't think it needs a shim. Let's see, does this hole line up? It's hard to see. Looks good. And probably this whole section I can glue maybe all at once. It's small, it's easy to manage. We got this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. Whole bunch of boards. These all fit good. I can probably glue this whole thing. I'm going to need a spacer here. This got all ripped up. We have this little piece that broke off. We'll put that back. Oh, this must have been in there. Yeah. So this base part will be glued while the other strips that go down there are drying. Here's the bottom side. You can see all the old rib marks. They look kind of funny. They're not exactly in line with each other. And there's our new piece that we just added for a little shim. The ribs went a different way on that piano, but the grain goes the correct way. I can lay this down, put this pin on. Push this in the corner. Put these on. There's still glue on there, and it looks like it's going to be about another 1/4 of an inch, like this one. And this one, they're getting hard to see. That one, it's 3. That'll be the 4th. Probably 2 more for this whole side of the board until we get to the midpoint of this piece. Base is going to need some. That little section is glued together. Like this crack. This can probably be glued back. Pretty soon it's going to be a gigantic potato chip with no ribs. Then we can sand it and start putting the ribs on. Here's an easy glue job. This little piece right there. Put a bit of glue on each face and I can just tape it to this piece. and it will stay there. It's so small, it fits so well. It doesn't need a lot of pressure. The glue will just stick it there and it'll be good for another 100 years. It's connected to the rim too, so it really doesn't do anything. But we'll put it back. That's where it was. Just like that. Here's our base section, all glued up. Fits like it's supposed to in the corner. And this next piece is going to need a shim. There must have been a little factory piece in here, little shim, that came off when we unglued everything in the hot tub. So now there's a little space there. So what we're going to do is the usual thing, plane both sides, put a spacer piece in here, maybe like that big, and then we can glue this piece and this piece, and I think this piece. These all seem to fit very good. There's no spaces. A little tiny space here, but that sometimes those can squish together. It's no problem. So hopefully the next time you see this piece, this whole thing will be glued together, and we will just have the middle part to work with. Here's another dirty old soundboard that's hanging around. I cleaned the side with some alcohol. This is probably, again, 1900s, 1890s, somewhere around there, so it's the same age. Look at the grain. It's exactly the same, or so close you cannot tell. So if I put this piece, and it will be about like this, I'm willing to bet you will not be able to see that shim when we're done. The base end is thinner too. Well, that's the test piece. Here's the actual board. It's about the same thickness. This is a lot thinner than what I've been working with. This is the stuff I've been working with for the long sections. If I put this up against it, you can see that it's much thinner. I'd like to save this stuff for thicker boards because we do not have very many thick pieces. So this piece is just a little bit thicker. It's perfect. So that's going to be our shim. I don't think we've showed the glue yet that we use. This is hide glue, ground animal hide. You just add it to hot water. Oh, 50-50 mix. That'll mix up into the yellowish glue that we use. Very nice and liquidy, and that's what we glue all of our stuff with. Here's a miniature clamping table that I put together with an old upright bottom board for the base. All these jigs, it's basically the same thing as the large one. I'm gluing on about an inch wide piece to this back part right here. So that should dry quickly because it's so small. The board is getting bigger. We have this last strip to sandwich in between this giant piece we have all together and this main piece in the middle, and some over here still. We have some shim work to do coming up right here. This gap, that's going to get a shim spacer. So pretty soon the board's going to be all together and we can start putting the ribs on. Check out this plate support bolt. How overbuilt it is. Heavy duty. All the nickels peeling off after 100 years. What we do with these is we put them where they go. I think this one goes somewhere else, but this is just demonstration. When all these panels are all loose and floating around, they could be this way, or they could be anywhere. So when we are putting them back, we make sure the holes in the panels are where they need to be. Because if we get it wrong, this hole in the panel could be right here, and then I guess you could plug it and drill a new one, but we don't have to do that. We are careful of putting them back to where they were. The panels in this piano are lining up very good. Even about 90% of these are lining up very close to where they were. They're all drilled at weird angles too. They're not straight down. They're like crooked, funny. That's one thing that helps us locate where the panels go back. Here's the one piece. We now have this whole big section and this middle section, so we're just gonna sandwich this between it, and then that whole piece of the soundboard will be together. It's almost there. Working on the next piece here. Very, very long piece. And from the factory it had this spacer shim in there. I'm not sure why it wasn't just the plank to the plank glued together. They had this in between. But the ends of this were very thin and they kind of shriveled up and disintegrated. And this would be just too much work to put back. So we're going to make our own. We don't have anything this long. So we're going to make two pieces. We're going to put one that starts right here. It's going to go all the way to the bridge. And then the second one will start under the bridge and go to the end. So you will not be able to tell that it's two pieces. It will look good. And we have this piece here that I dug out. It's long enough to go to the bridge from the treble. Pretty sure this is from the Vos. This is that same piece that I put in the bass. Same board. I believe the grain is very good. Good match. I put it next to it. This piece I'm looking for is very wide. Not tight grain. I think this is too wide up here, but as it gets towards this end, it gets tighter grain. So I could take some out from about the middle of this plank and put it in there. That grain. About, I don't know, around here maybe. Let's cut this thing in half. Steal a piece out of it. And we'll move this over. I think this needs to have a fair amount of spacing added. That's what's going on. This is from that old Vos. And it will now be part of a Mason and Hamlin soundboard. Back in the soundboard room, I decided that Vos board was not good enough to put in that Mason. The grain was kind of didn't match quite right. So I'm back up here. This piece right on top looks good. You can see right here. That looks like a good match. The right grain. And I believe it's long enough. And what's cool about these old boards is if you get real close and you listen to them, you can hear them talking. And what do they say? They say, "Save us. We want to go back into a piano. We're not crushed." Oh, it's okay. Shh. We'll put you back into a piano. Don't worry. You will sing again. So this looks like a very good piece. Ooh, it might be too thin though. Bummer. Well, here's a name on it. What is it? Number 21782. What is that? Krakauer. 1901. I think that's too thin though. So I'll dig in this pile and find a good piece and put it in that piano, into the Mason.